Okay, so this is the f4 lens, 16-35. I want to just see whether or not it is worth spending a bit more money to improve the quality, so I'm using Canon's test run, which is an awesome service, I think. This is what I've been using so far for all my videos on BlackBeltBarrister and a lot of them on BlackBeltSecrets. 10-18, this is 4. So I'm hoping to get that little bit more differentiation from the background, a little bit more bokeh with the f4. And I want to decide whether it's worth paying for the f4 or the f2.8 Model 3, which is a bit heavier and doesn't have image stabilization. So you tell me, this is zoomed out. I think, yeah, that's zoomed out. This would be me doing a normal video, just sitting here, normal background. I've put auto white balance with white priority, just because this camera does that quite well, I think. I know lots of big creators say do it all manually, but this does a pretty good job, and for the sake of making sure that it's a fair comparison, I'll check it out in post, but I'm going to compare the two lenses with auto white balance, ISO 200. This is obviously f4. This is it. This is my normal sort of zoomed out wide angle, but I also want to have the option to be that little bit closer and hopefully get a little bit sharper on the up close detailed. I want not to just crop from a wide angle. I mean, this has a bit of a zoom as well, but when you zoom in with this, it obviously goes to 5.6. So this has got a constant f4. So I'm hoping that with that zoomed in, we're still at f4. We still should have the bokeh background. I'm hoping that it's a little bit sharper for the extra bit of money, because I'm starting to want to really invest in both of these channels, BlackBeltBarrister, BlackBeltSecrets, do more vlogs, do more legal content. I'm just generally hoping this is better. So tell me in the comments what you think about this one, and I'm going to switch out so we get a direct comparison. I am not a professional photographer, videographer, filmmaker, creator, whatever. I'm professional at a few things, but not filmmaking and photography. So this is just a real person use of a piece of good equipment. I read about how to use it properly. I think I've got most of the things set up properly. I understand ISO and aperture and shutter speed and all these sorts of things and how they work together. Yes, I'm using auto white balance, but that's just because this camera tends to do it well most of the time. And when you see a video of mine that the white balance is kind of off, that's probably because I've been trying to do it on manual. The sun goes in and it screws everything up. So if it's on auto, it just tends to be better than I would do it unless I have spent enough time doing it myself. Not that I'm unwilling, I just don't have the time to put into so much effort to do that. So I'm doing that automatically. I'm hoping this is an improvement on this. And now I'm going to try the 2.8 to see whether it really is worth, I think, twice the money. This one I think I can get for £1,000 now. This one would cost me £2,000. So let's see what they look like. Okay, this is the 2.8 Model 3 of the same lens, 16-35, everything else the same. I'm keeping auto white balance, the shutter speed is the same, ISO is still 200. I'm starting at f4 to do a fair comparison between the two first. So it should, in theory, be the same depending on whether or not this is a better quality lens. So again, fair comparison side by side. Maybe I'll try and put some of the image footage side by side. Again, like I said, this is just a real person using real footage, trying to get a better quality image out of the camera. So this is the f4, and now if I zoom in to get a similar shot that I had on the previous one, this is if I'm going to do a bit more of a close-up, a bit more of a detailed, more serious type talk video, without sort of zooming in for losing to the 5.6 on the other camera, on lens rather, this one here. So if this is any better, great. If it's not worth what is probably twice the money, another £1,000 on top, then it's really not worth the difference. But now I'm going to zoom back out. I'm going to drop this down to f2.8, which is really what we're paying for. I'm going to adjust the shutter speed to compensate for the amount of light coming into the camera. So now we're zoomed out, we're at 2.8. I've had to change the shutter speed so you'll get a bit more different movement. ISO 200 still. Now, this would be my normal sitting talking position unless I zoom in. Is this worth? I'll try and put image side by side. Is this better than the f4? I guess the only way to know is to put them side by side and try, right? So that's what I'm doing. That's why I've borrowed both of these lenses. I'm having to use this because I've got to charge my Rode mic. So it's kind of good timing because that died on me because I haven't charged it for a long, long time. So that's charging down there. So in the meantime, this is zoomed out to the f2.8. So zoom in. This is me, slightly closer, slightly more face talking video, but 2.8. So is the background differentiation that much different? Is it worth the extra money? I don't know. My guess is going to be, what would I guess? My guess is that for 95% of people watching these vlogs, these videos, these whatever, is that it's not worth it. But if I'm going for just that edge, just that little bit better, then it's not as simple as is it better, because there's a choice, there's a trade-off. This one doesn't have image stabilization. This one does. So f4 with image stabilization, f2.8 without. And that's going to be important because I will probably want to move about with the camera when I'm filming. So let's do that test comparison. Let's go back to the f4 with the image stabilization so we can do a fair comparison of that. I'm just going to walk around my gym here for a few minutes to see what the difference is. Okay, so we're back to the f4 lens. You have to be careful that I don't sort of trip myself up and pull myself about with this thing. But I've got a SwitchPod, which is an awesome thing because now currently it's tripoded. I'll try and get my iPhone and take a very short video so you can see what that looks like. So I can, if I want to, this is just check that image stabilization is actually on. Yes, it is. Autofocus and image stabilizer. So I can pick it up by the first leg, bring the legs together, and then it's a handheld walkabout thing. Right, so I know the white balance is going to be messed up because I'm moving about and it's darker in here. This is held out. I mean, it's heavier than a point and shoot. Camera plus the lens, gonna get heavy after a while, I'll be honest. This has got image stabilization, so if I'm moving about and I'm walking backwards and forwards, I'm just gonna do a few steps backwards and forwards because it's gonna, obviously there's gonna be some movement with me walking about, and I'm gonna see a real-time test as to whether this image stabilization is going to be any good. Okay, so that's the f4 with image stabilization. Now I'm gonna try it with the other lens. And the SwitchPod is awesome. You can open up the legs, sit back down, and you're off away again. Change the shutter speed to match the lighting. But there we go. That's the f4. I'm going to do exactly the same thing with the 2.8, and only then I'm going to watch all the footage back, slam this into a bit of a vlog so you can see my testing procedure and what happened. If you're faced with the same choice, the same decision whether or not to spend the money, this hopefully will help you. Let me know in the comments if this is helpful to you. Can you see the difference? Is the difference worth it? Let's swap out for the 2.8 without stabilization, and I'll do exactly the same thing I've just done. Okay, back to the 2.8, and we're going to test whether or not the lack of image stabilization is whether that makes a big enough difference. Again, same thing again. I'm going to grab the front leg of the SwitchPod, bring them together. Lens looks noticeably bigger, but it doesn't feel too much heavier, to be perfectly honest. But I'm just going to do the same sort of moving around again. So there we are. If I'm just moving around and moving around back and forth just a little bit, and I'm going to walk back and forth just like I did before. So there's no image stabilization on here. So maybe forget the ambience and the white balance and the light for a minute. Is the image stabilization, I'm going back and forth just a couple of times, is the image stabilization or lack of image stabilization really causing a big problem here? I don't know that it is. I don't suppose it's going to be too bad. I mean, they're a similar weight. You would want to swap hands now and again, so you know, bit of a good workout actually. With it's probably 1.5 kilos holding out straight with your arm out straight after a while when you do that for a while. So there's my moving about, just so you can see whether or not lack of image stabilization, but 2.8, whether the trade-off is worth it. Is the trade-off of image stabilization worth it? So I don't know what you think, but I couldn't really tell much of a difference between the f4 and the f2.8. There's certainly not £1,000 difference in them for me, and the fact that this one's got image stabilization, I'm going with this one. So I've just recorded my first video for Black Belt Barrister using this lens. I think it will look quite good. I like the image coming out of this lens. I think it will be worth it. Let me know what you think in the comments, and thanks for watching.